Hey guys, it's Kelly, and I'm starting something new today. It is a 7-day series of my photography confessions. So it's going to be one confession every day. And the first confession is that I'm actually a little bit terrified to share all these. Okay, but really, here's confession number one. I use one lens. One lens. And I've been using one lens for more than 3 years. And that lens is my Nikon 24 to 70 2.8, and it goes on my Nikon D750. Before that, it was on my D700. I do own a 35 2.0, but the Nikon 35 has sat in my camera bag as a backup lens for 3 years. So yeah, I'm actually kind of scared of changing lenses. I don't like taking the lens off my camera body. It freaks me out. I'm scared I'm gonna drop it. I'm scared I'm gonna break it. And there are times when I felt kind of inadequate, or maybe like I'm not a real pro because I don't have like a whole arsenal of lenses. And then I think, but I really like my 24 to 70 and it does everything I need and I don't really need anything faster. And now I've gotten to this point where I know my 24 to 70 so well. I know everything it's going to do. I know how the images are going to look. I know what the compression is going to be like and how it's going to handle different situations. And so I almost don't even want to try anything new. So there you go. That's confession number one. I'm a one lens photographer and I don't love admitting that, especially to other photographers. But that's the truth. So if you want to chat about it, if you're also a one lens photographer, shoot me a message and then stay tuned for another confession coming at you tomorrow. Okay, confessions day number two. So yesterday in my confession, I admitted that I only have one lens and I only use one lens. But I got tons of messages last night that I am not alone in this. Most people use a 35 millimeter for their one lens, but I love knowing I'm not alone. So today's confession. Sometimes before I go to a session that might not be the type of session I shoot regularly, especially if it's a posed session, I freak out that I'm not going to remember what to do during the session. And so when that happens, I grab a sticky and I like jot down on it thoughts or ideas or things that I know I want to make sure I get during the session. Or I go through kind of inspiration photos that I have. And then I clear off all my memory cards because I always clear off my memory cards just before a session so they're fresh. And then with my camera, I take pictures of my sticky notes, or sometimes I'll take pictures of my computer screen with the inspiration photos on it. So they're the very first pictures on the card. So then if during the session I draw a total blank, I just have to flip forward and I can see the first pictures on my memory card, which are the pictures of the notes that I took. And nobody's ever the wiser that I'm looking at notes, which I love. And honestly, I hardly ever look at them. But it makes me feel better knowing that my notes are there. And I think it also helps me mentally prepare. But that's my confession for today. So if you have any tips or tricks that you use like that, I would love to hear them. Any confessions that you have about things that you secretly do during a session, shoot me a DM and maybe I'll share some of them tomorrow if you're open to it. I'll be back tomorrow with another confession. Okay, here we go with confessions, day number three. And this is definitely the most personal one that I'm sharing yet, but one that I think, after talking to a few people, that I know I'm not the only one experiencing it. Over the last, I would say year, but more specifically even like the last 6 months when it really became an issue, I was completely overwhelmed with life, with work, and with parenting. I think I'm like a lot of people that when you start your own business, especially a creative business, but it's probably applicable to any business, you think, oh, this is great. I'll just do it in my spare time and I can still be a stay-at-home mom and I can work and it'll all just work out perfectly. But it doesn't always all work out. It's all just too freaking much to think that you can parent all day and then work all night and have zero time for yourself to rejuvenate. So the last couple of months, I have been taking a lot of time to think about what I really want. I've debated closing my business. I've debated putting my kids in daycare. I've debated going back to an office job. But ultimately, I've decided that I want to keep my business. I love what I've built and I want to keep building it. But in order to do that, things had to change. And they were hard things that I fought against for a long time. And so part of that is why I quit Facebook, because I needed less time sucks. And the other big decision that I've made is to put my little one in daycare in September for 1 day a week so that I can have a work day while my other one is in school. But really one of the biggest things, aside from drawing all these boundaries to try and help myself stay sane, that I've had to decide is what I really want from my business. And it's hard when you go and try and build your business and then it finally takes off, or some months it takes off. It's not consistent still, if we're being honest. But it starts to take off and you realize like, oh crap, I actually can't handle this. I wanted all this business, but I can't do it. So yeah, it's still a work in progress, but I feel like I'm making it. But that is my confession for the day, that it all became overwhelming and that we can't do it all. I think we have this mentality that we can, but we can't. And also just to add, if you're struggling with this as well, which I think a lot of people are, one of the biggest mental shifts in the last little while that has helped me is to refer to myself as a working mother. I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm a working mother. And really, that's just helped me say no to a lot of things. Because I used to think, oh, I can volunteer for school and I can do this and I can bake homemade cookies and oh, this is so great because I'm a stay-at-home mom. No, I'm actually not. I work like 30 hours a week and I can't do all of that stuff anymore. So if you feel this way too, know you're not alone. Shoot me a message. We can chat about it. If you have any awesome tips, tricks, things that have helped you do a mental shift, I would love to hear about them. And I'll be back tomorrow with another confession. Thanks, guys. Yesterday's confession was that, if you missed it, was that I feel overwhelmed sometimes with mothering and working and all the other stuff we have to do in the day. And holy smokes, there's so many of you that feel that way too. So thank you to each of you who reached out and that we chatted over direct message, because it's really nice to know that I'm not the only one that feels this way and that struggles with keeping it all together sometimes. Okay, so on to today's confession. This, when I wrote this down that it was going to be a confession, I thought, oh, I'll cross it off. But I think it's kind of funny, but also so ridiculous at the same time. But here it is. I have session clothes. More specifically, it's like 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants that I like to wear when I'm doing client sessions. And I freak out if they're not washed. And usually the night before, I'm like running around to make sure that at least one of those things is washed and ready. I guess it's like people that have their lucky underwear or sports players that wear like special shorts or whatever. But these are like my lucky session clothes. And more importantly, they're comfy. And I know that they're like the seams aren't going to rip when I crouch down to do. And also the 3 shirts that I have, they're pretty long. And so because I crouch down a lot during a session and I want to make sure that my butt is not hanging out through the whole session. So yeah, and sometimes I forget what I wore to a pre-session meeting. And then I'll be like going around asking my husband, being like, do you remember what I wore 3 weeks ago to that meeting? Because I can't wear the exact same thing back to the session. And he's like, of course I don't remember what you wore. This is the guy who like has 3 outfits total. But sometimes that is a panic. So anyway, that's today's embarrassing confession. And I want to know if you have session clothes too, or like, do you have the same thing that you really love to wear when you go do a photo session? And do you also freak out that you might have already worn that in front of those people? And if you're a past client of mine, have I wore the same outfit to see you multiple times? Maybe I have, because clearly I need to start taking notes of what I wore to the pre-session. Maybe it doesn't matter. My husband tells me it doesn't matter. But anyway, okay, new one coming at you tomorrow. Confessions day number 5. I hope you guys are liking these so far. Some of them feel like they might not be true confessions, but maybe things we don't talk about regularly. But anyhow, a lot of people are reaching out, and I'm loving that part of this series. So my confession today is that I always have and still continue to shoot using auto white balance. And that might not seem like a big deal if you're not a professional photographer, but in the professional photography world, there's a lot of talk about Okay, sorry. I am stalking the UPS man, waiting for a MacBook that is supposed to be here, and it's a Friday of a long weekend, so I really wanted to get here today, and I thought I just heard the door bell ring, and so I just stopped doing Instagram stories to go check the door, and it was totally not the UPS man. Okay, so anyway, so there's a lot of talk in the photography world about using Kelvin numbers to dial in your white balance. So if you're not a photographer, then you might not know that all light has different types of temperatures depending on what type of light it is. And so a lot of photographers manually in their camera enter this specific Kelvin number for the type of light that you're in. So if you were, for example, in like a shady area, you would know that's a certain Kelvin number and you would enter that into your camera before you start. So yeah, my confession is that I've never learned the Kelvin numbers and I have zero interest in learning the Kelvin numbers. I've just never felt the need. My cameras, I use Nikon and I love that they seem to be good with the auto white balance and I never need to change it. Sometimes I fix things, like when I'm editing, I will fix white balance, but it's usually really minor. But yeah, it makes me feel, because there's so much talk about it, and if you know what you're doing, you should really be using Kelvin, and it's faster, and blah, blah, blah. And I just I don't care about it at all. And if we're really being truthful here, when I got my Nikon D750, I don't even know where the button is to change white balance. I know where I can change the settings, but to dial in the actual number, I don't know, I've never used it. Okay, so there we go. I will be back tomorrow later in the day after we do Canada Day Parade and Canada Day festivities and all of our Canada 150 stuff with another confession. Have a good one, guys. Hey guys, happy Canada Day today. If you're not in Canada, then you might not know, but today is Canada's 150th birthday, so it's sort of a big deal around here, and we went and watched the parade today and sweltered in the heat. But the kids loved it, and they totally got their share of candy, and even my 2-year-old figured out this year how to run and elbow other kids to get the candy, so she was right into it. Okay, so for today's confession, my confession today is that I'm obsessed, and it's sort of a new obsession, with timing myself. When it comes to work, I time everything now. So I have this app that I use on my computer, and I can access it on my phone too, but I time when I sit down to type emails, I time it. When I edit, I time it. When I call, even though I don't call very much, which is another confession, I time it. And so I've become really obsessed with tracking how long everything takes me. And even if my husband will come into my office and start talking to me about something, I'm like, stop, I have to stop the timer because I'm timing right now how long it's taking me to edit this session. And I sort of like to see if I can beat myself at things. Not that I want to rush through any sessions or things, but sometimes I time how long it takes me to find songs for slideshows, and I hate how long it takes me to find songs because sometimes literally it's hours. And so I'll set the timer and I'll be like, okay, last time it took me an hour and 46 minutes to find a song for the slideshow, so I'm going to beat that and get this done in an hour and 30 minutes. And it's just this weird thing, and it makes me focus way better so that I don't think, oh, I'll just send this email and then I'll do this and then I'll do that. So yeah, that's my confession for today. I am a closet, maybe not so much a closet, timer, obsessive timer. And actually, when I think I'm going to do a 7-day series about things I would have done differently in business, that's going to be one of them. And I'll talk more about why. Okay, so I'll be back tomorrow with the very last confession, the end of this 7-day series. And I'd love to know what you're thinking of it so far. If you're liking this, I'm thinking I'm going to do a few more series, maybe once every 2 weeks. So if there's something you want to hear me talk about for 7 days, let me know what that is. Hey. Okay, it's the very last day of the confession series, day 7, and here's a mini confession before we get going. I couldn't find a blank wall in my house to do this on today, so I'm sitting on the floor beside an air compressor and a sewing kit. So yeah, it's all real life around here all the time. Okay, today's confession. I actually had a session today, and this made me think of this, or it's solidified that it's true, that I leave every session thinking that I didn't do a great job. Not that I usually completely bombed it, but that I usually am in the car driving home and I think, oh, I should have done this and that and this and that. And I know if I think about it hard enough that I did a good job, but yet every single time I leave a session, that panic still comes on me that it's no good. And I've talked to other photographers about this in the past, and we kind of compare it to the stages of grief, because I freak out on the way home. And then I come home and I usually let it sit for a few hours. And then I pull up the cards on my computer and I pick out sneak peeks. And then I usually think, okay, well, this was good. I have a ton to choose from for sneak peeks. So, like, yeah, I did pretty good at this session. And then I leave it for like a day or two, and then I edit the full session. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to have enough images. What happened to this session? And so at that point, I let it sit again because I'm panicking. And then I come back to it usually the next day. And then I'm like, yeah, no, this is really good. This is some damn good work here that I did. And I go back and forth until I'm done editing. So if you're a photographer, I'm sure you're sort of familiar with this feeling, because I think it happens to a lot of us. But if you're not a photographer, now you know what happens when I leave your session. It alternates and fluctuates between total panic and loving all of your images, back and forth. But that goes to show how invested I actually am in your pictures, because I care a lot and I don't want to deliver junk ever. And so I panic about that because it's really important to me. But usually by the time I have a gallery all up and ready and I send that email to the client, I'm usually pretty confident in it by that point. So it fluctuates, 3, 4, 5 times until I'm like, yep, this is good, I can send it out. So that wraps up this series. Thank you to everybody who's reached out. I've had more conversations about these little videos than I think I've ever had on Instagram before, and I love every single minute of it. And so I thought it might be fun if you're a photographer and you're struggling with some of these things and you want to talk through them and you need some support, or maybe just a cheerleader. I'm a damn good cheerleader. I'm going to offer a little flash sale on mentoring. So from now through to Wednesday at midnight, Mountain Standard Time, maybe it's Mountain Daylight Time? Mountain Time. 25% off all mentoring packages. That can be a portfolio review, a one-on-one Skype session where you can ask me anything you want. We can talk shooting, we can talk business, we can talk like life stuff if you want, or we can do a more intensive session where I give you assignments and then we connect back and we talk about how those assignments went. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned for the next screen because it's going to have the code for you, and then head on over to my profile page and you can click the link to see all of the options and all of the details. And if you have any questions, shoot me a message.